I would say good morning to everybody, but I know we have people literally calling all over the world. So I'm going to say good morning, good evening, good early morning for the 3 a.m.ers and good evening for the 7 p.m.ers. I'd like to welcome you guys to our webinar today. We're going to take a few minutes to start letting people in, and then I'm going to let Commander Arnold take away, but we call him Prince Al. He's our popular, pretty guy for the Navy. So wanted to welcome you guys. I'm going to go over some logistics after Prince Al gives the introduction. And so, yeah, welcome. We have a really great panel lined up for you guys today, and I'm excited to be here with you guys. So Prince Al, take it away.
Hey, thank you very much, Ashley. Yeah, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. As Ashley said, yep, my name's Commander Al Arnold. I'm the U.S. Navy Director here at the London Tech Bridge in London in the UK. I'm also joined today by my co-director, Commander Alex Bingham, and on behalf of the entire London Tech Bridge team, we'd like to welcome you all and thank you for joining us for this next iteration of the London Tech Bridge Tech Sessions. So we're really excited to be able to bring you what is sure to be, a lot of great discussions, and hopefully some great perspectives will be shared here today. And, we have this tremendous group of leaders from across the US and UK here to share this opportunity to look through one lens of diversity and kind of discuss the critical importance that it plays in the STEM and innovation fields. And yeah, just really excited to get this going. So I'm not going to delay it any further. I'm going to turn it back over to Ashley, who's going to be today's moderator for the event. So Miss Ashley Floyd is a rock star engineer from the Naval Surface Warfare Center, Carter Rock. And I know she is super stoked to be moderating today. So Ashley, I'm going to turn it back over to you and let's kick things off. Thank you.
Thank you. I really am. I get so excited talking about STEM because it is a passion of mine. Graduated with an engineering degree. And I've spent time actually in materials and just doing that for the last 11 years. So yeah, STEM and innovation is very near and dear to my heart. I would like to just give you guys some logistics. So I'd like to actually know where you guys from, talk in the chat, what's your majors? Are you even STEM? Are you not STEM? Because we have special questions. Where are you guys calling in from, dialing in from? I'm going to be really active in the chat. So yeah, if you guys are interested, let us know where you're from. Let us know where your interests are. Do you have patents? Do you have projects? Do you have amazing things that you're interested in? I want to see it in the chat. So the next thing, so I'm going to let the panelists introduce themselves. I know I just sprung that on them, and we'll just go around the room. So Seiko, go ahead and start us off.
All right. My name is Admiral Seiko Akano. I am the Program Executive Officer for Integrated Warfare Systems. Basically, we do all the development for all the weapon systems for all surface naval ships in the United States. So I would say it's the best job in the Navy. Definitely the most fun. Requires a lot of STEM and innovation. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Claire?
Thank you, Ashley, and hello, everybody. My name is Claire Cameron. I am the Director of Innovation in the UK Ministry of Defence, and I'm absolutely delighted to be here this afternoon. And I'm going to get out there right now. I'm not STEM. I did a history degree at Durham University in England, and I have spent a lot of my career in the Ministry of Defence in the UK. And my job as Director of Innovation is very much enabling and catalysing the innovation across the armed forces and across defence, and also breaking down those barriers to innovation and making the whole process and the whole system of defence more open to and agile and able to innovate. No small feat, but an absolutely fantastic challenge.
Thank you. Go ahead, Butch.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm Commander Cassidy Reese. I go by Butch Cassidy, famous American outlaw. I do have a STEM background. I was a physics undergrad. I'm currently the chief test pilot at Air Test and Evaluation Squadron 31, the X-31 in China Lake, California. I have an operational background as an F-18 Wizzo, so flying in the backseat. And now I'm an aerospace engineering duty officer, so very much in the STEM field, and I love what I do.
Thank you. Camilla, go ahead.
Hi, I'm Captain Camilla Meek in the Royal Navy. I am the Captain of Engineering for the Surface Flotilla at the waterfront. So I run the engineering support teams, the logistics support teams, the assurance activity for the whole of the surface flotilla. I am an engineer by background, marine engineer, having got a degree at London University. I've been doing this for 25 years and it's brilliant, absolutely brilliant.
And I'm gonna get to Miss Tina too, but I just love like talking to the people from the UK because like, you know, to us, you guys have access and I just love to hear it. So I'm here for it all day. Miss Tina, go ahead and introduce yourself.
I have to say, I agree with you. I always love when I go visit over there and chat with everyone. So I'm Tina Harrington. I am with the National Reconnaissance Office here in the US. I actually like to say I have the best civilian job there is in the US government. I work with satellites. I've worked with satellites my entire career going back way too long. And I'm a math major. So you don't have to be an engineer to work with satellites. Math majors are kind of critical in these areas as well. So look forward to all the questions and chatting with folks.
Awesome, awesome. So what I'm gonna do is, so you guys can ask your questions in the question and answer function that's at the bottom of you guys' screen. And what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna weave in these questions as we go. I send out the bios to a lot of people, but we can always send them out after. I don't wanna wait, spend too much time on those. But yeah, let us know in the chat, you know, where you guys are from, what your interests are, and then make sure you ask your questions using the question and answer function. That way I can get them to the panelists. So I'm gonna start off with some fun questions because I wanna kind of get everybody like loosened up. So if anybody watched the Super Bowl over here in America, they had this ad that I text some of my coworkers and friends saying, oh my gosh, you're taking civilians to space, right? Like, you know, I wanna sign up, like how do I get that job? And so when I was reading the bios with Ms. Harrington or with Tina and with Seiko, they had like satellites, so like on their bios, they said they were in the satellites and space systems and this and that. So I said, you know what, I want to ask them, you know, what would you guys do if you guys went to space? Like what would make you guys so important to put you on that spaceship? Because I know that you guys probably saw it and would want to go too. So Seiko, tell me, Tina, tell me, like, what do you guys think about that?
Well, I mean, I can tell you the reason why I'm here is because I wanted to be an astronaut. That is the entire reason I joined the Navy. And Jill Richards is on the call. I think she's the one, Commander Jill Richards, who works at ONR Global, is the one who convinced me in Latin class in high school that, hey, there's the Navy has the most astronauts. Right. And I'm like, what? Because I mean, this is the goal. So we went to the Naval Academy together as gone on a recruiting trip, and long story, but ended up at the Naval Academy. But I'll tell you that if the offer came to go to space, I would jump on it. Do you remember a few years ago, they were like, hey, does anyone want to go to Mars? I was like, let's fill that out. And, you know, it was like a one-way trip though. I think it's like, hey, you want to go on a one-way trip to Mars? And I'm like, yes. And I'm going to get my niece who's, 12 to figure out the technology to bring me back. But yeah, absolutely. Over to you, Tina.
So being civilian, I actually never thought I would go to space. And I was much more interested in how space helps us in everything on the Earth. I started my career actually working GPS, and this was before the days of everyone having GPS in their cars. It was one of these things where, hey, at that time, a GPS receiver was pretty much like the size of your really large backpack, and you couldn't actually carry it with you or take it with you anywhere unless you were really, really physically fit. I'm going to get a cat to help me talk now. But I would go to space in a heartbeat. I think it is like the coolest thing that they're now moving beyond. I will say it's so impressive. I've gotten a chance to meet several of the prior Navy astronauts and times out at NPS, and just to hear them talk about it, it is so inspiring. And I think getting women up there it's already been happening. I think doing a full women crew, which is one of the things they're talking about, I think will be very interesting because, again, I think women come at things very differently. We tend to try to figure out how we complement each other's best and worst traits versus necessarily trying to go head to head sometimes. And I think that would it will provide a different dynamic under that situation than it does when it is all mixed. So I would go, like I said, in a heartbeat, but I love space because bottom line, the amount of things space does for us here on the Earth is, anyone that is navigationally challenged, thank God for GPS.
Right. Look, so once we do this webinar, I'm going to send this to the Space Force and hopefully they take us 6 right here. I think we make an amazing crew. and then we have the different backgrounds. I think we would probably need like a botanist. So we have to find somebody that can grow us some food because I don't think I saw that on you guys' backgrounds.
You don't want me, yeah, for that.
I know I tried to grow plants. I had a garden and it didn't go well. Not enough sun, right? Yeah, thank you guys for the insight. Yeah, let us drop in the chat. Like if you guys could go to space, what would you guys do? Like, how could you guys help? So I actually want to go to this, Claire. So I know we had talked and I had like the completely wrong questions. I didn't even know you weren't STEMs. Like, what do you say to people who think that, STEM has to go with innovation? Because clearly, like if you don't have a science and engineering, a math background, people think you can't innovate. What do you think about that?
Thanks, Ashley. It's such a great question. So I think everybody can innovate. Innovation starts with everyone. And of course, the bit about innovation that makes me so excited is the fact that it's really about that kind of that end delivery, pulling something through into a product or taking it to market, or from our kind of defense perspectives into something that's going to help protect us. And so everyone can be an innovator. And the skills needed are having those ideas and then really working out how to get them to the end. So there's a bit of everything that's needed from the project management to maybe the business or building that team. And of course, building a team to help is something that that kind of makes a success of everything. So you can understand what somebody else can add. So that's how I see it. And for me, it's very much about exactly that, building that team, making us strong as a team so that we can deliver for defense, and also thinking about the processes and the people. We often think about tech as really being about innovation, but we need to innovate across the way that we do things, not just what.
I like when you said that. It's like it's the way it is, it's the process. It's not necessarily just technology, because I mean, if you think about it, a lot of great innovation nowadays just takes something that is one way, and then they take it and make it better, and they keep on making it. And I know, Tina, like you said, you're a math major too, because I had a friend that was a math major, but when I was in college, I'm like, well, what are you gonna do in math? Because you take these classes and you're like, what does majoring in math do? What does, like, I had no idea until they told me and sat me down and said, oh, that's how math is in everything.
It's funny because when I was in college, it was like, oh, so you're going to be a math. Oh, so you're going to go be a teacher. It was like,
right.
And I'm like, that's a great option. My patience level probably is not a good patience level for a teacher. So, I thanked them, and it was like, no, I'm going to go over in space. And they're like, but that's an engineer's job. And I think it's great that Claire is a history major. When I do talk to people, I think when I talk to STEM folks, I tell them over and over again, you don't get anything done in space without every major out there practically. You got to have people that know how to do the business side. You've got to have people that understand what's happened in the past, that can basically bring that past to the present and help you move forward. And I think it is just phenomenal that Claire is with us. I did not realize that either when I looked at her bio.
Yeah, so I love that. And now here's me in space. So this is what it would look like for the future Space Force that sees this video. I just wanted to make sure that I did that so they know that sign me up. I really love that. And I see in the chat, some people are talking about how, like, they're getting their children involved. Their young daughters and little girls are, so interested. And I do want to ask this because I know this is a common theme. Like, what made you guys interested into like getting in the STEM or innovation field? So Camilla and Butch, maybe you guys can weigh in. Like, what got you guys into the fields that you are?
Well, I did it, I think, almost entirely by accident. And it was sort of, I mean, I loved playing around with things when I was a child. I loved Lego. I loved taking stuff apart. I was good at maths, I was good at physics, but I didn't want to do anything pure. I didn't want to do pure maths. That seemed altogether too difficult. Pure physics, likewise, and sort of you add the two together, and you sort of got engineering, and that's how I came into it. I sort of gave it very little thought. I'm not sure whether I would do it again. Would I do it again? Absolutely, but perhaps I'd do it with thought this time round. I don't know. So, but yeah, that's how I got into it. Was just playing around with stuff, finding out how stuff works.
What about you, Butch?
I too was a huge Lego fan growing up. I loved Legos. Choosing physics, I don't know why I kind of avoided engineering. I actually did like the pure side of things, both on the math and physics side. I was kind of more in the theory realm, and now I end up in a very applied job. But I like the engineering side a whole lot too. And I really liked what Claire said there about how, everyone has to be an innovator, and it's not unique to STEM or anything. So not to steal your thunder, Ashley, for an upcoming question, but I know you were going to ask. So I have an MBA that I got a couple of years ago because I was interested in kind of moving outside of the STEM field and seeing what other kind of study and majors were out there. And I thought it would be applicable to my job as well, to kind of on the acquisition side of things, to see how we could apply business principles to defense acquisitions, which is not a simple or straightforward process. And kind of as I was going through that, I thought a quote that kept coming up in my head was be brave enough to be bad at something new. And that's kind of like one of those things I really like to live by, like have that courage to try something completely different and not be good at it when you initially do it, and just kind of learn something. That's something that I really enjoy. So kind of on a tangent there as to how did I get involved in STEM, but I just really wanted to follow up on Claire's comment.
No, I definitely like that because I think that I really think that like the getting into it by accident or the like wanting to like see a different side of things. I saw people in the chat, people got MBAs and theater majors and like they're working in STEM fields, and we have the history major, innovating, and I love how like you have people that have those different insights and backgrounds. Yeah, because like you said, so I wondered. I always say that the people in STEM have like superpowers. Like sorry, Claire, but I said they have superpowers. And I say a lot of times we can get that the technology and things like that, but also go into like other things. But you have special rare people that are like Claire and my friend Cheyenne right here is on that. They're the theater major and the history major that are like leading innovation because they see things so differently. And that's why I love these like building diverse teams and getting the different perspectives and like once I was talking to someone and they told me like having someone, it's like innovation can look like in 4 different ways about who you are. So, race, sex, background, things like that, about what you do, who and how you think. And and once you take a team and can multiply and build upon that, like you're going to win every time. Yeah. And I think, Butch, why did you say you went into getting your MBA?
Well, it was, there was one really practical reason in that to join the, at the time, the Defense Acquisition Corps, now it's Acquisition Professional Membership, one needed 12 business credits. I had basically none from a physics undergrad and a systems engineering master's. I really didn't, I guess I had some, but not a lot. So on the very practical level, I said, well, I need to get some business credits. And then I just thought, well, if I'm going to do something, I might as well kind of, dive in. And it had always interested me. And I got to say, I'm not scared of finance or accounting anymore. So it worked out. And I really enjoyed what I learned. And it was a very diverse program. It was the first time I was in a civilian education program. So I went to the Naval Academy and then Naval Postgraduate School. So the diversity of thought of my colleagues in that program was really cool. So it was a great experience, and I learned a lot. I enjoyed it.
That's awesome. But now don't go on mute yet, because I want to bring up the fact that you're a pilot. And right when I talked to you, you were saying that you wanted to go and get on your plane. You're going to like go have some flight time.
That's true. Yeah. So I'm in the Navy. I'm a weapons systems officer, so I'm a backseater. But last year, I recently got my private pilot's license. So that, again, be brave enough to be bad at something new. So I kind of know how to talk on the radios and navigate thanks to GPS. Shout out there to Tina. But yeah, the stick and rudder mech of actually controlling an airplane was something that was new to me. So that was a fun experience. Again, be brave enough to be bad at something new, but turns out I really enjoy it. And yeah, if anybody out there wants to start flying small airplanes, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun.
There you go. I got my plane background. Yeah, I was like, oh my gosh, the Zoom just kicked me out, but I'm back, guys. Yeah, like I think I flew a small propeller one time plane for my class. It was flight vehicle performance in college. And that was probably the coolest thing. Getting behind, taking off, taxiing in the air and landing was just like phenomenal. Like so I would recommend it too. I've only did it once, but I say, I want to go back. And I said, like, there's Andrews Air Force Base down the street, and I definitely want to get involved. And you don't have to be in STEM to be a pilot. Like, that's everybody. So Camilla, so one of the things, like, so I had to actually like look this up, because like I found out you have like a huge honor in your field. So the MBE, can you tell me what that means again? I wrote it down where in my notes, but my font is
Member of the Order of the British Empire.
yeah,
So,
like how did that come about?
That was just, do you know what? I was just really fortunate to be the right person in the right place at the right time. And it's an operational honor. So it was awarded for the work that I did when I was out in Bahrain. And this sort of goes back to what Claire was saying about, innovation not just being, new tech, shiny gadgets, but about doing, innovating the way we do things. And I got out there and I found that our ship's availability was very, very low. It was sort of, circa 25 to 30% on average, which is just frankly not good enough. So I set about, I had 10 months and a small team of engineers who did the support out there. And we just set about improving the availability. And in that 10 months, we got up to about 80% steady availability. And it was, see, the opportunity came because I saw the problem. The opportunity arose because I was there at the right time and I found some ways around some of the process that can get in the way of these sorts of things. But once you've got it then on that steady footing, it just self-generates itself, self-perpetuates. And so that's basically what it is. It's finding different ways to do stuff. So yeah, I mean, that was a great, well, a huge shock, frankly, getting that. They're fairly rare, but a great honor, and a great job to do.
Hey, Ashley, can I ask a follow-on question to Camilla?
Yeah, absolutely.
Can we do that?
Yeah, this is a conversation. Like, don't look at me
Okay.
like, and don't, like, I think Bush said, I'm gonna steal your thunder. No, this is a conversation. Like, we're acting like we're in the room together.
Okay. Because I mean, Camilla, that's awesome. Like, I'm so interested in that. Do you think that your ability to see the problem differently that nobody else could, is maybe direct related to that you were a woman or something else or your background? Like, how were you able to see it just a little bit differently in solving that?
I don't know. I think in some ways it might go back to Lego. I never follow the instructions on Lego. That's just not the done thing. You get a bunch of bricks and you make what you want to make out of it. And I think the other thing is that coming into it and seeing it differently. I think there are some advantages in being a woman because somehow you can you see things differently. And therefore you can try and explain it in different terms to those that have always had that same mindset. So that, I had some great conversations with some fairly sort of, set in their ways people who didn't want to change the process and didn't want to change the system, but won through in the end. So yeah, I think there are some advantages there.
Yeah, someone actually mentioned about learning differences. Like, have you guys had experience? So like, Claire, I'd be interested too. If you're in innovation and you maybe are in a room with a whole bunch of like, scientists, engineers, mathematicians and stuff, like, have you seen like learning differences with like how you process things and then go into trying to like lead these teams? What have you experienced? And, maybe Tina too.
So absolutely, there are so many different, obviously lots of different learning differences. We try and sometimes do it quite systematically and do a little exercise, and you can just do it really quickly and easily. If we're starting out with a fresh team and a kind of distinct piece of work, then it's really worth taking the time early, I think, just to kind of understand those different learning styles. And in particular, that you can sometimes do it so that then you can understand how best to communicate with that person so that they will receive what you're saying in the most kind of productive way, and that can I just find it fascinating. And of course we're all kind of products of who we are, so sort of suddenly taking oneself out of oneself and thinking, oh my goodness, if I actually communicate like that, it's going to work. So yeah, we try and do that a little bit, and I find it really helpful. But I don't think I've got any general observations for STEM and not STEM, I don't think.
I'd say for me, one of my biggest things was always lead with humor and always lead with humility. Bottom line, no matter what room you're in, there's someone else smarter in that room than you are. No matter what, someone else is going to hear things differently than you are. And just basically, I think one of the biggest things is listen. You got to listen to the other people in that room, because they are going to bring something different than you are. And it also helps you hear them to then help you feed back to them if there is things you need to have them move along with you on. And I think if they realize you're a human being also, and you know what, we're going to screw up too. We all do. It's just part of life. And it helps that they feel that they can have those discussions with you versus being worried that when you say something, they have to take what you say and do exactly what you say, or they don't understand what you're saying and they don't think they can ask you a question. And I think you just got to make it where it's like, I'm not any smarter than you are. I'm not any different than you are. I may have a leadership role. You'll have a leadership role in the future. Let's work together to get to a solution. And I think that's probably the biggest thing.
Winner, winner, chicken dinner. I love it. I think I love the fact that you said, hey, like, I'm going to get stuff wrong and I may not be the smartest person, because I know I'm never the smartest person in the room. I'm just going to put that out there. Don't listen to that part of the recording later. But I think that, like, when you have that top down and bottom up approach, like, and having people work together, like I think you can push past those learning differences. So here's a question, and I know I wanted to get somebody that has maybe experienced this or witnessed this. What happens when you have someone who still is always dealing with that, like, we've always done it this way? Like, how do you guys break past those barriers? Or, like, even the fact of your guys' progression, like, have you seen it change the higher up that you get? Do you feel that your voice is heard more? Like, I mean, I know I asked a lot all in one, sorry. But yeah, just like, I think for the people that are just like, they don't like the way you think, they won't listen, they're stuck in their ways, is you got to push past those barriers. Like, what experiences can any of you share related to that?
I think from my experience, so if I go back to when I first joined the Navy, and my first complement job, so my first real job, if you like, was as the Deputy Marine Engineer Officer on a 42 destroyer. And when I went out to join the ship, the person I was taking over from, Tim, came and met me at the airport, and I just said to him casually, so how many women on board this ship? Oh, and he said, oh, well, none until you get there. And I thought, okay, so I'm joining a ship, there's 180 crew-ish, and me. And it was very early in the days of women going to sea for the Royal Navy. And some of the things that I found there, were absolutely typical, women can't do engineering, real sort of old-fashioned attitude back in the early 90s. And trying to overcome that, was a real mixture of sitting down and patiently explaining to people why I thought we should be doing something this way, or whether we should do this or that, and sometimes, frankly, just circumventing them, and being confident enough in my own thought process and decisions to sort of go round that, get around the attitudes and do it, and then just be quietly surprised and quite chuffed that they found that, oh yeah, oh, it does work. Oh, maybe you do know something. And you sort of, it was quite hard work, but you do work your way through that sort of process.
I suppose just to build on that, and that's kind of, I've experienced that in various different scenarios as well. And I just, where you ended, Camilla, that kind of feeling of having to prove oneself to earn that respect in a way that not everybody else does. Goodness, it's exhausting. So if anyone's out there that's finding it exhausting, it's exhausting. And it's kind of exhausting having to have that confidence every time to put yourself forward and say, no, hang on a minute, I can do this, and I am here for a reason, and probably do need to listen to me. But then kind of using experience and knowledge and kind of working out, if necessary, how to go around people, and finding one's allies. I think are probably some of the things that I've got rather good at over the years without even really realizing.
Yeah, I would think that like you said, like having the allies. Someone else had mentioned that to me before. He was actually my former captain, and he said that he had somebody who was vetting for him that didn't look like him too. And so like he feel like it did help his career. Like he knows that there was a lot of good candidates and everything like that. And then he had someone to say, hey, you know what, just give me a shot. And they gave him a shot. And someone was vetting. Like I like the term like allies. And so like, how do you guys think that, like, what can we do what will it take for like more women to break those ceilings, like to get those glass ceilings, to like move up in the ranks, move up in their positions? Because like, Seiko, you said that, you got on our last webinar, you said, you got sick at the opportunity of you getting this high up job, and it was given to you, and you were doubting yourself. What would you tell to other women that are trying to break that ceiling?
I would say, I mean, this is all tied to that imposter syndrome. Remember, the discussion where it was like, I think sometimes one of the biggest challenges for women is you think, oh my God, I can't do that next job up. That's just beyond my capability. I'm not qualified. There's a million reasons. And I think taking the leap and knowing that you can actually do that job. And for me, I had some really strong male leaders that actually believed in me more than I believed in myself. And, I think I was saying on the last webinar that I'm not lacking in confidence, but so that means that like, if I'm having a problem with this, I can't imagine. I mean, I think everybody's having a problem with, can I really do that? Having folks that will help you in that, and maybe you aren't believing it, but you get to that next step and you kind of fake it until you make it. I think is really, really important, because you can do it. At the end of the day, you can do the job. You can absolutely do the job, and you're probably the most qualified candidate to do it across the board.
If I can, Ashley, I'll jump in, just following on to what Seiko was just saying. Bottom line, I think it is very easy, and women are definitely have a higher probability of doing this, to think you are not good enough. What I often tell people is, if there's someone that knows you, that tells you to apply for something or to take this job, and I always use the term, they know you. You know what? They're seeing in you what you need to have that next job, and you got to trust their evaluation of you too. And then we as women leaders need to be looking to say, how do we pull women through? I've been at one panelist discussion a few years ago, and they were saying probably one of the things we need to work better at as women is, how do we pull women through kind of that mid-career period? Lots of things happen to everyone through your middle part of your career. And I think it's easier for us to lose track of women during that period. And we've got to be looking at, how do we do a better job of providing that bridge through that period. And I think, again, it is not fixed, but it is getting better. And I have to emphasize over and over again, I saw some stuff going on in the chat too about it. There have been, I have had some huge women champions. The prior DNRO is one of my, you know, I would probably not be where I am without what she had done and worked with me on. But there have been male champions in my life who have been as critical and who are still as critical. And there are a lot of our male companions that actually do see what we can bring and are more than willing to help pull us through, but we've got to be willing to reach out and listen to them as well.
Hey, Ashley, can I just riff off of what Tina just said real quick? Because
Yeah.
I do think that we need to make some cultural changes as an organization. And part of that is, you know, you talked about that middle part, right? Pulling women through. I just think we've got to be more family friendly in general. You know, just the workplace we've got to figure out how to be more family friendly. And this pandemic has showed us anything. It is the fact that we can be, and we can figure out how to balance, you know, work life and home life. You know, I know it was really challenging, but I think going forward, if we don't learn some of those lessons, I think we'd have a big missed opportunity. The other one is just trying to build in anti-bias, you know, the unconscious bias by design into the actual organizations. I think that is so fundamental. And just having, you know, knowing that we've got these unconscious biases, we just have to tackle that. Over.
I like that too. So I want to build upon that too. So for Claire and Butch, have you had any like male champions or somebody who was like in your corner? Because, you know, as chief test pilot now and director, you guys are like pretty high up. Like, have you felt that there's been somebody who kind of was a mentor in that capacity? Because I know a lot of times people think your mentor should look like them, right? Because I said, I made this joke and I said, I need an old white man mentor. And somebody laughed at me and they said, you know, oh, I have this person. I said, no, like I have Black women, I have Black men, I have a Hispanic woman, a white woman. It's like, I want an older white gentleman that can give me a different perspective, right? So, you know, have you guys had mentors that have pulled you guys along the way to you know, help out in you guys' career?
Butch, I'll go if that's okay. So absolutely. In fact, I haven't ever had a female mentor. And when I'm talking to people about getting mentors, I actually absolutely have that conversation. Actually, do you want somebody that's different to you that's going to provide that challenge, or do you want actually a more safe space to discuss that's more similar to you? I think it's really important to make a really conscious decision. Male mentors, but also absolutely champions throughout. I'm afraid the UK Ministry of Defence has got some way to go. I think if I'd relied on it being women, I wouldn't have had so many champions. So absolutely both, and very, very grateful.
And yes, same. And generally, I think just given the composition of the service, my mentors have been men, mostly white men. Like Captain Meek mentioned there, when I showed up to my first squadron, my first operational squadron, and this was 2007, it wasn't that long ago, I was the first female aircrew in the squadron, which it's like, wow, it's 2007, you know, we're still having, you know, female first. It was kind of interesting. But one of my first mentors was in that squadron. He was one of my department heads at the time. He's now a carrier air wing commander, so he's doing quite well for himself. But just an interesting experience that I had there. So I attended the Sea Service Leadership Symposium, which is an organization for the sea services, primarily focused on, you know, women in leadership and whatnot. And he attended as kind of like a, you know, mid-level guy in our squadron. I was a junior officer, and then we had a junior enlisted woman attend as well. And it was all Navy and Marine Corps officers for the most part, but it was mostly women. It was probably 95% women. And I remember afterwards, he said he walked into that symposium and we were all wearing the same uniform, but all of a sudden he was like, whoa. he kind of finally understood probably a little bit of what it's like to be a woman walking into, male dominated spaces. And he said it was a really impactful experience for him because that was the first time he had ever experienced that kind of, flip in the gender diversity. And I think it was an interesting experience for him. And it was more interesting that he said that afterwards, how valuable it was for him to go to something like that and kind of have that experience where he's not, by default, the 95%, everybody else looks like him. So to any male leaders out there, if you have that opportunity to attend those kind of things, I think it's interesting and you'd probably get something out of it.
Yeah, I definitely don't want to take the conversation and just say like, hey, like, take it away from like men. Cause like, I think that a lot of men, when they come to these types of programs too, is like, they're willing to learn. And like, I think the best thing too, is like when they share what they learn too, because that's how you start to like change that culture. I remember actually being pulled into Naval X. So like, I'm actually on loan from my home command to do a rotation here. And I won't say her name, but I want to share this story because it's very impactful. When Naval X first started, it was a bunch of white gentlemen that were running it. And there was a woman. So the Naval X family, they'll know, so I won't say the names, but she said, hey, Ashley, like, I just realized I looked around and there's nobody of color like on the team. And she was the only woman at the time. So she said, like, I think we need to, I'd love for you to come over and just bring your ideas, bring your experiences. And I listened to a TED talk, I forget by her name, but she said, most of the time when we walk into these rooms, we see everybody that looks the same. And I actually did a TED talk for DAU on this subject to say, okay, we walked into the room, you expect to see on a Fortune 500 company, older white gentleman, correct? But what if you walked into the room and it was all women on the boardroom? Or if it was all Black or all Hispanic? I would say, am I at the right company? Because, that's not a normal thing. And so one of the things I say, like changing that culture, like I think like as we learn and as we grow with each other too, like those things will start to change to where it's like, it's now the normal, right? And so like, I like what you guys were talking about, like, when you walk in there and like, I know Claire and Butch, you say, your mentors were this, but I love the fact of having these conversations because, you start to see like, hey, I never thought about that. Like, what if we walk into a boardroom of Google and it was all women, or Apple and it was all women? Like, wouldn't that be crazy? Yeah.
Like in the chat, representation matters for sure.
Yeah, and I think the fact that we are 2021 and we think that idea is crazy, and we all nodded because we all did think it's crazy, I think is part of what the culture is that we need to change, because we should think, why wouldn't it be?
Yeah, I would think it was crazy if I walked into, I don't know, like if I walked into Microsoft and I saw all Black women sitting at the table, I would think I was in the wrong spot. And so it's not even like crazy out there, but like that's what I think. Like if we take this spaceship to the moon, I mean, go out to space and it's all women, like that would be like crazy amazing, because like you said, like everybody's like just as capable, but just to see the change and representation, and it matters. Definitely. So how do you guys think, Camilla, I haven't heard from you in a while. Like, what do you think would take for people to get into innovation, for like younger women, younger girls? Because what I think is that we see firefighters on TV, we see pilots, we see doctors and lawyers. We don't see people doing inventions as much. We don't see the STEM majors. Like, how do you make the STEM majors cool? Like if for a history major to get into, STEM, for a theater major, for an English major to get into this realm of innovation, like how do we inspire the young generation to get there?
I don't think it's necessarily about getting girls into STEM. I think it's about opening up the entire work opportunities for both girls and boys. So, just fundamentally, and I'm not a mathematician, sorry, Tina, but, if there's so many jobs out there and you want, half of the STEM jobs to be girls because it's 50% of the population, then you want half of the sort of what people might consider to be traditionally female jobs to be for boys. So it's a balance across the whole of the piece that I think we need to hit. And I think you need to hit it young. Even now, you can go into a toy store and you will find a blue aisle and a pink aisle. That's just fundamentally wrong. to me. I have a niece and a nephew who are 8 and 10, and they're fantastic. And they play with Lego. They paint and they draw. They'll kick about footballs. There is no girls things and no boys things really. And I think that's the key to it. And I think they've got so many bright ideas. One just needs to encourage everybody to keep pushing those ideas. So I think it's not concentrating on one element. I think it's concentrating on the whole, would be my view. Exciting things.
Yeah, probably got to start the education system too, like to say, hey, like these are really like opportunities, and like start like you said, like if you see like the women in more men dominated and men in more women dominated, that creates that balance across the board.
Yeah, and I mean, just to kind of add to that, I looked up some statistics on kind of where we're heading in the future. And the 92% of employees say they need people with technical skills, just in general, 92%. And 74% are saying that they're finding the right talent. There's 2.4 million STEM jobs unfilled last year in the United States. So what you're seeing is a need to have more STEM type education. We've got to do it early on, but we also have to do it mid-career as well. People who, are transitioning that, and Claire's a really good example of that. And I mean, people who maybe didn't have that as their major, but can transition into some sort of a STEM field later on. But I think that the need is there. The trend is going in the direction of we need more technical jobs. And it is both boys and girls. It's everybody that we've got to get into STEM.
So I'm gonna, if I can, Ashley, jump in, following on what Seiko was just saying, and Camilla before that. It's got to be across the board. We need to be able to encourage, but just jumping in on, and again, Claire is such a great example of this, and it reminded me of a visit I had made probably 5 years ago to one of the GCHQ areas there in the UK, and they were trying to staff up, and they were staffing up. They are a very technically oriented group, and so they were trying to staff up and bringing in a lot of junior folks. And what they were doing is they were bringing them in as classes. So they would bring in a group of them. And early on, they weren't getting enough engineers, math, STEM type folks. So they were bringing in, across the board, multiple degrees. And then they got to a point where they were getting enough applicants of just STEM that they went to a class that was all STEM. And one of the very interesting outputs of that is they came back and they said they did better when they had the multidiscipline in that group to produce better technical results, because you avoided that group think that you can bring. So just because it's a STEM job doesn't mean it has to be a STEM person. I do think it's, there's things that, yes, there's great utility you bring with STEM, but I think there's also great utility of that outside thinker coming in and helping in those technical jobs. And being basically, they can be the most critical player sometimes, because they just come at it so orthogonal to some of the rest of us.
Yeah, I'd just come back on that. I mean, variety is absolutely the spice of life. And, the thing that I see that I slightly sort of disappoints me, and I'm forever trying to find ways around it, is when you get people and they come in and they're bright and they're enthusiastic, they're agile of mind, they've got all these ideas, and then gradually, as they grow into the sort of the shape of the organization, somehow it sort of becomes, they're all morphed into the same thing. And trying to break that mold, I find, it's a challenge, but it's also really entertaining to do it.
Yeah, I think because Claire, I did see a question in here, and I wanted to direct this to you, because this can go for anybody if we felt like an outsider. But have you felt like, clearly you're in the position because you're the best for the job, and so that's no question. But have you felt like an outsider sometimes when you're communicating, and what did you do to overcome that, if you had that?
Yes, thank you. Definitely, yes. As a civilian working in defence, that can happen anyway. But in this role in particular, I can find myself in in-depth technical conversations. It depends on how out of depth I'm feeling. If I'm just on the edge, I feel like I can ask the question that is one step back or wider, and sometimes that just results in a great conversation. And sometimes I just have to ask what I don't understand. And again, that's absolutely fine. Everybody, I find, loves explaining. So actually, it's absolutely fine to ask that question. So that tends to be how I get around it. Every now and again, if I'm not feeling up for it, I'll be IMing somebody saying, "What are they talking about?" But I try and avoid that.
That's good. Good. So I kind of want to take the conversation this different route, like for our service members here. What are some of the greatest challenges that you faced as women in the military? How did you overcome, and then what advice would you give to like the ones that, like, leaders that are in the middle? Oh, famous, you're on mute.
Dang, I'll let Butch go if you want to talk first. And
all right, thanks, ma'am. I don't really think that I've personally encountered a lot of difficulties or challenges, honestly. Even though, like, yeah, being the first female air crew in the squadron, that was just kind of odd, I guess. But I didn't think it was. I did not encounter any, like, you can't do this because you're a woman kind of feel. And maybe that was in the back of mind for some people. I think I was lucky in that regard, perhaps, to, kind of come in, not quite 20 years, maybe 15 years after women had already, started flying fighter aircraft and whatnot. So I think for the most part that had kind of been put to rest. Now don't get me wrong, I have had some awkward conversations checking in to squadrons with senior leaders. A few times I was once asked if I wanted to join the spouses club. I was the first woman in that squadron as well, different squadrons, but so that was.
I had the same issue. They asked me to join the spouses club. Actually, it was the wives club at the time.
I think you did refer to it as the wives club.
Yeah.
We try to say spouses club now.
Now we do, but yeah.
Yeah. But at the time, it was, yeah. Would you like to join the wives club? And I said, no, I'm good. So it kind of gets back to that earlier discussion of, you have to be confident in your abilities, and I don't take it anymore to be that, I have to get out there and prove myself each day. Thankfully, I think I've, built up a resume that I don't have to do that. But early on, I totally agree with what Claire said about how that can be very exhausting. Like, every day you have to prove yourself. I think I just got lucky and really didn't face kind of those challenges, or maybe I just didn't notice. I don't know. Because I certainly don't want to minimize. I know a lot of women do face challenges in their careers and in their field, and I don't want to minimize any of those challenges. For my part, I think I lucked out, so it wasn't a huge challenge for me. But maybe the Admiral has some additional insight on that.
No, I think one of my biggest challenges was, and I don't know if I'll say this eloquently or not, but I felt in the middle early on, and maybe in the middle of my career, as that I was like a poser. And what I mean by that is, I mimicked the leadership styles of my bosses, who were predominantly white males. And I thought this was the formula. This was the recipe. And in order to lead, you had to do, you had to be aggressive, and you had to, the very more, I would say, masculine kind of traits. And I did that because those were my teachers. I think where it took a toll on me was that I wasn't as authentic to who I was as a leader in general. And I had to find my way out of that. I had to kind of navigate out of that and say, well, that's not that's not necessarily how I would do it. That's not necessarily, if I look at like how I treat people outside, that's not necessarily who I would be. So I think, and I don't know if that's, I think that might be just a majority thing, but one of the challenges I think is just making sure that you are authentic to yourself. And I think having more women in leadership will allow you to see that there are different styles and that there's not just one that you need to be, that you can be, maybe not as aggressive, maybe you can, and those styles still work as well. They're still as effective. And just owning who you are, I think is really important. But it took me a while to navigate through that.
Oh, if I could just come in.
Go ahead.
Sorry. I just couldn't agree more. And that has been such a journey for me as well. And for me, getting to the point where I could be conscious of when I was in and deliberately then mimicking some of the other styles, probably to get something done. I was like, if I do it this way, then I'm more likely to. But as long as I consciously chose to do that and recognize that it was me adapting my style to fit the situation, as opposed to feeling compelled to do it in order to kind of carry on my career, or even doing it unconsciously. Because I think at the beginning of my career, I found myself unconsciously taking on the behaviors of the organizations that I was working in, which were so male dominated. And it took a bit of time for me to then realize and work that through. And as you say, kind of recognize that it wasn't me being authentic at work. And so I think the earlier one can think about that and kind of really be deliberate about it, the more comfortable one will be and the more successful as a result.
I definitely love what you said
I
about.
think that.
Oh, no, go ahead. No, go,
that
Butch.
is absolutely. Oh, sorry. I hadn't even thought of that, but that is absolutely. I saw myself doing that early in my career too. Like, I have to be very aggressive and I have to take charge here because that's kind of the expectation and that's what's modeled. And when I went to my first test squadron that interacts with a lot more civilians than you would in an operational squadron, I was kind of out of that very aggressive mindset, for a few years. And then when I went back to it, I saw some younger women kind of being like I was when I was very junior. And I was like, oh, it kind of clicked in my mind. Like that's kind of a byproduct of the community culture, but that isn't necessarily like what I need to do to be a good leader or whatnot. So yeah, just like Admiral and Claire said, authenticity, and I know it came up in the comments, authenticity, being genuine, being true to yourself, I think is very important.
Yeah, it was just,
oh yeah, go ahead, Tina.
I was going to say, because I was reading the comments too, and yes, authenticity is critical. I saw someone say, I love pink, and I am proud that I am probably the only person that has a purple challenge coin. I am, because that's my favorite color, and you know what? I'm proud that I'm a woman, and it's gonna be purple, and I get jokes about it. It's like, yep, and you want one too, don't you? So I think being yourself, and it is so hard, especially when you're young. I was lucky. I don't know if the Navy folks know her, but I had Admiral Young very early in my career. She was in the first graduating class of women out of the Naval Academy, and I had her as a mentor early in my career, and I got to see that difference of a woman being in charge than a man, and just let me learn to be myself a lot earlier because of that experience. And you got to figure out what your own style is. Everyone is different, and being able to see that out of a woman, I cannot say enough and can't ever thank her enough for where I am.
So I thank you guys for that. And like, talking about like the mentoring part again, because I mean, this is always a common thing. Like, are any of you guys actually like actively like involved in helping other like women climb the ladder, or like pouring into them, or like teaching them? Because like, I know Seiko, I know you have a group that's, it's a mixed group, the mentoring out Wolfpack, I think, because they're supposed to come to Naval X. We're still working that, right? But are you guys like what are you guys doing to like help others behind you? Like, you guys are paving the way. You're at the top of your game.
I think it's quite difficult because you don't want to be seen to be particularly favouring anybody in that sense. So, getting the balance right. So, the way that I do it is to try and invest in all people of a particular rank and rate within the organisation. There's not many women in my organisation because we're predominantly engineers. There are many more in the logistics area, but it's trying to encourage the same growth across everybody and treating everybody in exactly the same way. So I don't think I spend any more time with women in my team than I do with men. But I find it a really difficult balance to try and do that.
So I'll just add to, Ashley, what you said about the wolf pack. I did start a wolf pack. It was not, male or female specific. It was to everybody. You just had to be, junior. So you had to be, a GS 12 or 13, junior officer. And the wolf pack, we thought would be, about 10 or 15 people. We got 45, I think, initially on our first round. I mean, which is a pretty big group to kind of organize. But of the 45, I would probably say 90% were women and minorities. So I think the signal was this hunger, to be mentored, right? This kind of this access to, I think before, access to leadership really didn't exist. Or maybe it did, but it was very hard because, leaders are very busy. And so having kind of a set group and a time where every month they have access to leadership, they have the ability to talk about what they're seeing, what they're hearing, what their issues are, what their viewpoints are. And it's unfiltered with, sometimes we play the telephone game, and it's trying to get to what is the ground truth of the challenges that we're all facing at every level, and just upping the comms and being understanding, and again, access to leadership at all levels.
So if I just take a slightly different perspective to Camilla, we've talked already today about how difficult it can be to be operating when you're in a minority. And I think that's something we've all experienced. And then at the same time, there are fewer in this example, but we could be talking about race or anything else, but it's fewer role models. And then there's a female trait about having less confidence and kind of wanting to be really sure that you can do something before going for it. So for all those reasons, I do find that I am happy to provide more time and support for women who are working their way through. Interestingly, the people that ask me to mentor them are, I have more female mentees than male, just from a demand basis rather than anything in particular. But I think helping show those opportunities, helping show people why and how they're able to do them is a really important part of being a mentor. And then also just being a visible leader, I think is also important, and for people to be able to see that it is possible to do it. So those would be my reflections.
So if I can just come back on that, yes, I absolutely agree. But it's not my unwillingness to mentor people in sort of individuals. It's my absolute belief in their abilities, and that's what I try to get across to them. If they're a leading hand or a petty officer or a chief, they've been selected and trained and promoted to do that job. And therefore, I think one of the things that I try to get across is, I absolutely believe that they can do that job. My confidence in them is paramount to me. I like to think, they are quite happy to come back and say, and some of them have, if they don't think they can. And it's just getting that confidence piece across. So I start off from that position of absolute confidence in everybody's ability to do the job for which they were selected, without anything else.
Yeah, that, and it's interesting we talk about like diversity because we know it's not about just like what you look like too. Because I messed up too because we actually have someone on the line that is hard of hearing, deaf of hard of hearing. My cousin is, and I know that we've also talked about like even I did a recruiting or a seminar, not a seminar, a information session for Gallaudet, which is the deaf university in Washington D.C. And across the board, I think that these conversations are always good to have because it's like, I think like being more intentional because like, it's not just about the boardroom looking different, but also like feeling different and also making like accommodations because I think I was complaining when one of the doors in my building at my home command, it wasn't automatic. And then there was someone with a walker that like had to do this extra funky turnaround thing to grab the door and get back in. So, I really love like bringing these things up to keep these conversations to know like, hey, like this is going to take work for sure to, like bring like people up. So it's like, we all have biases. We talked about that. People talk about that all the time, unconscious biases, because like they're natural. It's what we're used to raise. It's what happens, just being raised. But what I do like is that by having these kind of conversations, it brings awareness to wake us up because I mentioned actually in my TED talk, being colorblind. It's just being oblivious and unaware sometimes. And it's not intentional because we're not intentional when we do these things too. So, but I like that intentionality, but that only comes also from helping make yourself aware. So I love that conversation where we were talking about like how we mentor and things like that. And as we wrap up, I do want to get to two things because like this is also one of a question I had. Someone asked about equity in pay. And I don't know if it's different in the US or now, like, and we don't talk about a salary. So I don't know what you guys make. I know it's more than me, but, equality in pay, at your lateral levels. Have you guys had conversations about this? Have you seen differences? Have you heard about differences? And what can you guys share about that? I know the stats are out there. I Googled it.
Not something we've discussed, but given that our pay tables are published and in the public domain and they're exactly the same, depending on your rank and seniority, I have no problems.
I think Ashley, where we have an issue is more about how many women versus men are in every grade level, right? Which is if you see in your organizations, and I know we track it in my organization about, you have a pretty, at the entry level, it's fairly even. And then as you get up in rank, for some reason, the numbers drop off for a variety of reasons. And that could be due to family, trying to balance a family. It could be due to the culture. It could be due to a lot of things, but that could equate into, if you were to average it out, the pay gap. There is a pay gap between, the amount of women and the amount of men in an organization, just due to where they fall in the rankings. Does that make sense?
So I was going to follow on to that because so obviously in our civilian world, like in our military world, it is, you kind of know where people are, if you know what grade they are, what step they are. We 2 years ago changed to a rank in person. So now you have to apply for promotion. And at the end of our first round of that, I did the statistics looking at the number of people eligible and the number that put in. And I looked at it by male, female. I looked across basically diversity across the board. And what I saw consistently were white males were the highest percentage of population of eligible that put in. And the lowest was female of any race. And so I think women often, it goes back to that imposter syndrome that you're talking about. We don't think that we're ready for it. And so we don't raise our hand. And I think that's definitely true also when you get to the, an industry world where basically a lot of times they're waiting for the person that's going to complain, and we don't raise our hand and complain when we don't think we're getting fairly treated.
That's right. I think it's the broken rung theory, where, if we can't figure out those steps up, then you don't see necessarily representation in the leadership positions. And I think that's also combined with shoot, I just lost my train of thought.
That happens to me
I was-
all the time.
Never mind.
Admiral, could I ask, when you say you're seeing sort of roughly the same numbers at entry level, is that
Yeah.
across all branches and grades? I mean, is that within the engineering branches, or is that across the whole piece?
So my organization is mostly civilian. So from a civilian perspective, we are getting a lot. We are seeing more even numbers, and even in the military, I think we're increasing our numbers. They're not, in the engineering duty officer community, I think at the entry level at lieutenant, we are at 26%. So it's not 50%, but we're at 26%. But at the captain level, we're at 3%. So you can kind of see when you see a 26% versus 3%, we are losing a lot of women just in the engineering duty officer community, but that also mimics or mirrors the civilians, what we're seeing in the civilian side, not as grossly, but you are seeing a differential there. And you can equate that again to pay and see that there's a, essentially in totality, a pay gap.
I'd say that was exactly what we saw too, is we see that at that entry level, again, it's not 50-50 in the engineering world, but it was actually not nearly as skewed as it was as you got to the higher ranks.
That's right.
And so that's where it really does require that real work on our part to say where are we losing them and how do we change that?
Oh, this is what I was going to say. Before I was going to say that, so you've got the broken rung theory combined with the ducks pick ducks, right? So, you're in your slating panels or what have you, if you don't really have a good diverse slating panel, typically they will, and again, this is that unconscious bias, they will pick who looks like them. And that's just something that we've got to tackle.
Yeah, Claire, have you noticed in your organization too, like some of those, because I don't know like how the demographics are like for the UK, but I know that I do talk about this, like I know I go back to my TED Talk, but I did a lot of research for it, but when you look at like numbers like across the board, we do see that pipeline. Like, yeah, is it the same on that over there in the UK as well?
Yeah, it is. I would imagine it's really similar. So for the Ministry of Defence, it's recruitment at the sort of at entry is relatively even, I think. And then exactly as described, the numbers, bless you, dwindle through that. So I was going to say, when I was just thinking about this, there's the encouraging people to join, be it defence, be it STEM. There's the societal things we were talking about in terms of which I just 100% agreed with in terms of how we bring up our children and kind of encouraging everyone that all opportunities are open for them. And then there's that retention point, and that's about us as organisations really making sure that that we can encourage anyone and everyone to stay through and work through the kind of life events that are going to happen to everybody as we go through. And we've still got more work to do. And I think the sort of public sector in the UK, the civil service and the military are doing quite a good job, but actually until it's societal, until it branches out everywhere, it's not going to filter through into individuals' circumstances and lives.
And it's I like how I love, Claire, how you did that, because like, guys, we're at our time. And I always want to be respectful of our time, because I know we can have these conversations for another 3 or 4 hours. Like, I cannot wait for the day when COVID goes away, when we can all sit over at these round tables, hopefully in that spaceship, because I'm going to keep pushing this. And I promise you, if you guys have contacts in the chat, drop them to Space Force, because I want to send them this, because I think the world needs to hear conversations like this, not just in the UK, not just over here in the United States, but literally the world. So I really appreciate these conversations being candid, being open. I'm definitely going to send the recording out to people that have missed this event. And then also, I'm pretty sure, I think I connected with most of you guys on LinkedIn, but if you guys want to continue these conversations, I'm pretty sure all of our panelists are willing to continue these conversations. And there were some personal questions in the chat to Tina, to Claire, Butch, Camilla, and Seiko. So I didn't want to ask just singular directed questions, but they're on LinkedIn, so I'm pretty sure you guys, you know, I really want people to like keep these conversations going because that's how we keep on learning. But I do want to be respectful of time because like I want to keep going. Like there's questions to answer, there's fun to have. But I thank you guys. I appreciate you all for the willingness to be open and to make time in your busy schedules to just impact lives and inspire change and just, you know, have these things. Like I love it. I love it. So if there's any last words, then you guys can give you know, motivation for any of these things. Like we'll keep on having them.
Awesome. Thanks for moderating, Ashley. You did a great job.
Yeah, thanks so much for putting this together, Ashley, and for being such an awesome moderator, and to everybody who dialed in from around the world. Thanks for listening, and to all the panelists, man, it's awesome to chat with you guys. It's fun times.
Yeah, brilliant. Definitely the best bit of my day, if not my week. So thank you so much, and really, really happy to carry on the conversation. It's so important. I hope people can take some strength that we're all facing the same challenges, and you can definitely find a way through.
I would absolutely echo that. It's been the best part of my week so far, certainly, and B, just get out there, go and do it. Have confidence in yourself because you can.
Yep. Thanks, Ashley, for having all of us. And this was phenomenal. And I just have to echo exactly what Camilla said, because go support others and have fun doing it, because that's what makes the difference in the end.
Okay, well, thank you all. Really appreciate it. And I think, Seiko, you were trying to come off mute. I didn't know if you wanted to say something.
Oh, no, I was just gonna, no, I echo everybody. I just love that everyone was very, hey, you know, believe in yourself, and I love it. It's a very supportive group.
Well, yes, well, thank you guys. That concludes this webinar, and I will be sending this out. And also the chat. I thought the chat was amazing. I'm gonna go catch up and stuff. So thank you guys for joining us, and I hope you all have a wonderful day.
Thanks, Ashley.